And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, is a man who's been watching so much C-SPAN, they accidentally called Tarek Skubal Tariff Skubal. Talk about bad nickname. It's Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Spring training baseball or C-SPAN. I don't know. This is why you subscribe to all the different streaming services, right? You have some different options. Just when we thought spring training was getting boring, getting into the dog days a little bit, we have some interesting developments. I think the biggest one that people are talking about, Casey Mize continues to pitch well, and Kenta Maeda had kind of a Kenta Maeda outing recently, gave up 3 homers, also punched out, 5 guys, including Aaron Judge twice. So it was difficult to know what to make of that outing. All the homers were at George Steinbrenner Field, which is not the biggest park in the world. Wouldn't have been out in many other parks. So AJ Hinch's comments after the outing kind of said it was tough to evaluate. And I agree. I would say it's hard to give Maeda too much sympathy because all 3 of those pitches were just terribly located. They were meatballs. The velocity was a little bit up and down. It's pretty clear the Tigers want to see him go multiple times through the order. For as much as I have said, I don't think the Tigers are cutting ties with him. The idea that he was entrenching himself as that number 5 starter might be changing a little bit. And in a way, that's less because of anything Maeda's doing. At the end of the day, he still has 19 strikeouts and 1 walk, which is a terrific ratio. It's kind of more about how well Casey Mize is pitching. We've seen this splitter be at its very best ever. And I think the question for these final 2 weeks of camp, will Mize pitch well enough to bump Maeda from the rotation? If so, is there room for him in the bullpen?
So if it's a question, sometimes these things aren't necessarily binary like that. If there's a question, has he pitched well enough to bump Maeda out of the rotation? In a vacuum, right. 8 innings, 10 Ks, no runs. And you're talking about the pitch sequencing and all that stuff. Yes, he has pitched well enough. Will that ultimately matter is really what we're asking here. And I think I'm just sensing, it's like a gut feel thing. I'm just sensing that it seems like as plausible as it's ever been for him to get that number 5 spot in the rotation. You're seeing graphics put out there, and he slotted in there. Jason Beck, MLB.com, covers the Tigers. He just had a roster projection where he had Mize in the 5 and then Maeda in the pen. And sometimes if you're watching spring training and you're looking at the numbers, you kind of go nuts trying to figure out what's going on here. So this is me going nuts trying to figure out what's going on here. Maeda's not short on innings, dude. In spring training, he has almost 13 innings pitched, which is, obviously these things are close, relatively speaking, but by far leads the team, which tells me that they are trying to see every little thing out of him before they kind of make this decision. This decision, barring injury, God forbid, is going to go down all the way to the end, right? So it almost gives me kind of what used to be the 4th preseason game vibes in NFL, where it's just you're just going, reps, just to see. And then you have a weird game happened on Monday, and it's yeah, he leaves the game and his spring training ERA is 5.68. It's not really anything to brag about. But at the same time, there's enough good there that if there was no Casey Mize breathing down his neck with his contract situation, everything that we've experienced with him in the old English D, it's all right, we could kind of work with this, being the Maeda thing. But what I'm going to tell you is, as of now, I am more comfortable with Casey Mize being that 5th starter. Doesn't mean it's going to work out that way, but that's kind of where my mind is at.
Yeah, I would be really curious to know what AJ Hinch thinks about the bullpen and how he would prefer to have this bullpen constructed. Because in a way, I think Casey Mize's roster spot is tied a lot less to Kenta Maeda and more with what's going on in the bullpen. Because if you have a bullpen spot open, you can feel better about pushing Maeda into a long relief role and carrying Mize in the rotation. The Tigers, I don't think are going to go with a 6-man rotation or anything like that. AJ Hinch is very protective, wants to keep the bullpen fresh generally. So I think my last roster prediction, I had Sean Gunther and Brant Herter both on the team. And that was just before the Tigers added Andrew Chafin, or just after. Well, we have seen some Chafin in action. In his last outing, he was throwing like 89. I don't know that Chafe looks ready for big league action. I think there's a distinct possibility, unless he really picks it up in his next couple of outings, that he could begin the year in Toledo just to have kind of a longer, safer ramp up. Herter, who the Tigers love and who is terrific down the stretch, my guy just hasn't been able to find the strike zone all spring. I saw it happen once, and whatever. I saw it happen twice, and whatever. He'll figure it out. Well, we're getting toward the back half of camp, and he hasn't figured it out. His roster spot's in jeopardy. Sean Gunther, really good down the stretch. A little bit similar. He has not been lights out. So there's a world where you could carry only one of those 3 lefties and feel okay with that. I think they're going to carry at least one. So they have 2 lefties in the bullpen, one to go along with Tyler Holton. That leaves you 1 bullpen spot. Brendan Hanafy has actually pitched great in camp, and no one's quite given this guy the respect he deserves. Would they option Hanafy so they could put Maeda in the bullpen, Mize in the rotation, or would AJ Hinch really rather have a bullpen he feels great about? You can easily option Casey Mize, and when you have that rain delay or whatever, Mize is the guy you call up. These, I think, are the questions. I know no one gets excited watching Kenta Maeda pitch, but I'm telling you, the Tigers aren't going to eat the $10 million. So now maybe for Casey Mize to have a chance, it's probably what happens with Brennan Hanafy or the lefties, or maybe there's a world you could still option Jackson Jobe. The more we see of that guy, I think that's kind of crazy talk, right?
Yeah, it is crazy because we can't have, no disrespect to the media in Toledo, but I need Jackson Jobe quotes, like he gave. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but it's like, yeah, I'm gonna throw my stuff. Try to hit it. Probably not going to. I need that for the Detroit media, selfishly. No offense to those fine journalists in Toledo, but yeah, I think it's really good that you point that out, Cody, and then bring up the whole lefties things, because sometimes that gets convoluted, and again you start going nuts yourself to try to figure out how many lefties here. Yep. I think in a way you said no one's feeling great about seeing Maeda out there. I think I actually would feel okay if he had to come in one of those situations where you got to eat 3-4 innings out of the bullpen. I feel a lot better about that now. I feel better about him overall than I did last year. I think he deserves
19 strikeouts, 1 walk. He's still having a good spring.
That deserves to be said.
Balls left the yard shouldn't flip this whole conversation too much.
That deserves to be said. You know what I mean? Because I think going in, we were all kind of prepared where it's all right, well, they're just gonna have to give him the spot. You know what I mean? And then the Flaherty signing happens, and then and Jobe is electric, and it really starts crunching. And now at least I think you can at least say, all right, we have at a bare minimum, we have competency with Maeda, which I think a lot of people wouldn't have said that at a lot of points last season. So that's it. Everything affects everything there. To another thing there, everything affects everything is that we are getting, more. I'm sensing some more momentum regarding another former 1-1, and that is Spencer Torkelson, who, look, he's got the 3 home runs, whatever. Good for him. I root for Spencer Torkelson. He seems like a good guy. He is you're trying to look for things that actually are kind of real with the swing, and he's doing this and that. And there is one thing I want to shout out Cameron on Tigers Twitter who pointed this out. I saw it today, and Torque is whiffing at only an 8.8% rate, which that's a minimum of 30 swings in spring training. A lot of S's there. And that's comparable to Mookie Betts just for spring training. So there's something, Cody. There's something with Spencer Torkelson. There's an idea, and I keep coming back to this, that you put out there when you had not been at Lakeland very long, where it's no one's just like discounting Spencer Torkelson, like based on the people that you're talking to. I come back to that all the time because I think like that's so important to note whenever you're trying to construct this roster in your head. The thing is, I keep trying to get myself there. And when you have a Justin Henry Malloy, who we talked about a lot last week, it's hard for me to say you got to pivot this way because Malloy is killing it. Malloy has a track record where he's a 500 slug against lefties in 48 at bats last season. I know it's a smaller sample size, but that's with like 10 walks. So like he sees the play. I don't know if you've heard this about J-Hen, but he tends to know the strike zone. So I don't know overall about his defense, but we know Spencer has his, defensive history. It's just hard for me to get there with Spencer. It's hard for me to get there with Spencer, even though, again, sort of like the Maeda thing a little bit, I think there's a world that you could feel comfortable with it, not necessarily over the option that it would play.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I was asking people early in camp. Like, my kind of whole thesis was that even if Twerk has an excellent camp, can you get him enough at bats to justify carrying him on the major league roster? And I was told multiple times, yes. I'm still not fully, I just don't see it. In a way, I see it less given the other injuries in the outfield, which is probably mean Kerry Carpenter is going to have to play in the outfield more. If Kerry Carpenter is starting against a game against a right-handed pitcher, you can't just slide in Torque for a late game pinch hit because Spencer Torkelson can't play the outfield. Justin Henry Malloy can. I think it's not like J-Hin's having a shabby camp. He doesn't have the 3 homers, but he's hitting 320. Torque, I look at it, I don't know. The homers are cool. That's what you want to see. His on base percentage is 296, and then he's only walked once, but he's not whiffing. So what are we actually evaluating spring training on? It's always kind of hard to say, but I don't want to get sucked too deep into the trap of overreacting to just kind of the sheer numbers. Now, Twerk seems to be having to go to camp. There's really not much you can knock him for, but it was going to be an uphill battle, and we're kind of seeing that right now. I almost think his most likely path to the roster is if the Tigers could somehow carry both he and J-Hin, which would probably mean optioning someone like Jace Jung, and then Zach McKinstry's playing a lot of third, and then you're going to have to live with more J-Hin in the outfield, but then you could easily just DH Twerk. I'm not sure that's your ideal roster construction, but that might be one other factor to consider. Same goes for that's a way you can get Trey Sweeney on the roster, and I think there could be some momentum there as well. So in a way, we're halfway through camp, more than halfway through camp, and almost feel like I have less clarity than maybe a couple weeks ago.
No, for sure. And again, just to kind of throw out just the numbers for J-Hen, just because like he's got a 829 OPS. You know what I mean? His on base is 469. What do you say the Torx was? 296, and like you look at he's like tied or amongst the top in hits and like all these things that, like, again, for whatever it's worth, but he brings defensive versatility. He has a better plate approach, and quite frankly, he feels like a more untapped resource than Spencer Torkelson at this point. But again, I keep looking for ways to bring him in because I was like, well, what if Colt Keith is like having a really tough time at first base, and especially against a lefty, which we like, it's not like Colt's going to sit every lefty game like a carp, but like against a lefty, you kind of like find you a spot that you put in Torque, and his defensive problems aside, at least you have somewhat of a seasoned first baseman as opposed to whenever Colt, like really the past couple of years, they haven't really had a seasoned first baseman other than their regular starter. So Torque, and then, this year, like you put J-Hen, he's obviously not going to be seasoned. So it's like, is there that element there? And again, it's like the scientific method with Torque with me, where it's like I have a theory and then I kind of go through all the steps and I'm like, yeah. I don't know if I can, I just can't reach the conclusion that I thought I might be able to every time. And that's why I always advocated. I mean, you did too. Like at least trying them I mean, I joked about it on X, like put him in center field, but obviously I don't do that. But at least trying him.
Center, but yeah, right. If you seriously wanted him to be on the roster, I think there should have been an experiment to be like, is this guy halfway serviceable in left field? Now, again, I was told the answer, but without even trying it, was no, which kind of goes against the ethos we used to hear a lot. Of like, you don't know until you see it. I come back to the same place. I would like to get Tork on this roster. It's just very hard. And again, as we start talking about alternate roster constructions, it's even like, that question I've had for a while, can you carry Jace Jung, Zach McKinstry, Trey Sweeney, 3 guys who can play infield and all hit left-handed? It's kind of tough. A lot of the roster projections have had Sweeney on the outs. There's a world where you can carry him, but man, you're going to be really left-handed. I kind of want Trey Sweeney in there so that you're not going just Javi Baez and Zach McKinstry at shortstop. Sweeney has a chance to be a plus defender. It's hard to get there. That's definitely not happening if Tork and Jahan are on the roster. And that's why I come back to Jace Jung, who somewhat quietly had been struggling. He did connect for a homer. There's no StatCast data today. I'm not even sure what the pitch was. But he did homer, and he kind of needed it. Again, I don't think we should overreact to whatever his batting average is in spring training. Colt Keith's not having a very good spring. Colt Keith ain't getting options to Toledo. So, like, let's keep all these things in perspective. But that's one world. Maybe the Tigers just aren't seeing him get going enough. You want a Trey Sweeney on the roster or a Tork on the roster. Putting Jace Jung in Toledo to start the season is not totally out of the question. I think right now, just my gut, I would argue against that because your whole ethos is supposed to be about giving opportunities to young players. Although the Tigers have always seemed somewhat lukewarm on Jace, this guy can hit, man, and you need offense. And this is a bat I want to see develop. This is a bat I don't think is going to get a whole lot better from going to Toledo. Maybe he could improve some at third, but I don't see the bat developing a lot in the minor leagues. But that might be something to just at least keep in mind here that, you know, Jace is probably not 100% locked to break with this team.
Yeah, I have in my mind just not really given it a lot of thought that he wouldn't go west. Right. But when you look at it, and again, spring training numbers, we all have the asterisks in our minds when we talk about this. But he came into today with a 158 average. You know, his only extra base was a couple of doubles. So he had that home run today. You know, good on him. I agree with you 100%. Like, at this time last year, obviously we knew Colt was going to make the team. But at this time last year, you and I were pretty adamant that the bat, no questions about the bat. And it took some time. So, so that's all baked in with this Jace discussion too. But we felt very strongly about the Colt bat. I don't feel very strongly about the young bat, but I feel pretty good about it. And I agree with you that it seems to be what this organization is about. And again, some of it to me is like there's nobody breathing down his neck really. You know, you have options that you can put there, but in my opinion, if you were going to be a stickler in the mud, not to bring up the name that kind of defined our offseason, if you're going to be a stickler in the mud about certain contract terms and options and blah, blah, blah with Alex Bregman, which is what's been reported, then to like the way you justify it in the room is that like, look, we really obviously want Bregman, but if he's not going to take this, like we have some level of comfort rolling with Jace as our expected third baseman because blah, 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 blah. So there's, even though it's not the most ringing endorsement on the planet because, you know, you're kind of signing somebody to take his job, it is somewhat of like, all right, well, we're good with this. Like, we're at least good with this. Like, we can do this. And to me, like, there's enough upside there. And also the defense is still something I can't figure out. The upside I believe in. The defense is one of the things where everybody keeps telling me, and then I keep getting these projections that he's going to be some decent defender. And I haven't watched enough because obviously not all of them are on TV, like to really kind of give a scout myself. But the guy is a bona fide gamer. I think he could probably figure out how to be somewhat decent at third base. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be minus defense right now, but maybe it could improve a little bit.
Sure. But again, his whole career, or at least as a prospect, has been the bat's good enough to justify the defense. And I still believe that basically is what I keep coming back to. But if he is a victim of circumstance here, which I feel like this entire episode has kind of been talking about people somewhat victims of circumstance, somewhat victims of them not necessarily performing up to the standard. But he's going to be a victim of circumstance here. Like, it's going to be a short one because the only bat that you added was Gleyber Torres. So, like, if you send Jace Jung down, how many high upside bats do you have in a lineup? You just sent one down. So whatever number you have right now, you just -1. So, like, that's hard for me to wrap my head around too.
Sign Gleyber Torres, they moved Spencer Torkelson off at first base, which was, I said a million times, it'd be pretty irresponsible if your goal is to win the division and you're going to begin the year with Twerk as your first baseman. But there was a world where they could have signed a third baseman and not a second baseman. And if they have all this faith in Twerk and there is a real path for him to the roster, he could have been your first baseman. So I don't know. We can always relitigate the things. Maybe Al Avila was right, Kieran. Maybe Spencer Torkelson at third base is the solution to all of this, right?
It's the only thing we haven't tried, right? It's the only thing that doesn't exist right now. By the way, it's people have joked about it. People get angry when you joke about it. There's a world where this is kind of like an Al Avila smile season. Just say it. Just say it. That's all. Just so there's a little smile. That exists. All right, let's move to the man who's going to be in on these decisions, and that would be one AJ Hinch. So one of the things, Cody, that defined the first year that we did this podcast was the contract looming over AJ Hinch and whether he had an opt-out in there, and then AJ, remember all that stuff? AJ doesn't want to talk about it, out of respect to basically his profession, and kind of lingered, and then it kind of eventually, I think, got leaked that there wasn't one, and then blah, blah, blah. He's got an extension now, so all that's moot point. But Dave Roberts just got himself a new contract extension. He's signed through 2029. It's a cool, reported about $8 million per year. It's pretty nice. Pretty much winning the World Series has its benefits. So Dave Roberts gets himself a nice new contract, and because it's Los Angeles and it's the Dodgers, it leaks. The terms leak. We still don't know anything about AJ Hinch's contract because the Tigers are the Dodgers and Detroit's not Los Angeles. So it did get me thinking just a little bit, Cody, that I have a lot of respect for Dave Roberts. The success speaks for itself. Like, don't have to go too deep there. He obviously has a difficult job. It's a lot of scrutiny, like I said, in Los Angeles. And then once you start signing all the players and then you don't win the World Series every year, everyone comes for your butt. Like, Dodgers fans, not necessarily the most kind to him over the years. But I also hold AJ Hinch in like really, really, really high accord. So with the trash can banging World Series and Roberts, and to his credit, unapologetic nature when it comes to talking about, or at least wanting to talk about it in years past, like these two are kind of linked for a long time. But it'll be interesting to see who history remembers as the better manager, because Roberts is racking up a lot of wins right now. AJ took on a rebuilding project that, obviously is not finished yet, obviously. So what do you think? What do you think about like these two guys? That it's very rare to have two clearly elite level managers linked together so well and doing like a completely different type of job. Whereas Dodgers are signing everybody, and AJ Hinch obviously started out in the ground floor with the Tigers, and he's done it twice now, ground floor. So.
Yeah, I think you laid out the parallels pretty well right there. I guess if the question's like who's better, I would say that's really hard to answer because they manage in such different situations. It's worth considering this time a year ago, Dave Roberts was, I don't know if hot seat is the right word, but he was kind of on the hot seat, and when you manage in the postseason every year, in a way you expose yourself to more criticism. Doc's been under fire for pitching decisions in the playoffs, but AJ once pulled Zach Greinke too early in Game 7 of the World Series. So, sometimes these things work out, sometimes they don't. Had AJ not been fired for his role in a cheating scandal in Houston, he would probably be on the path to Cooperstown. He would have likely overseen that dynasty, maybe even done more with a couple of those teams. But that's not what happened. Instead, he had to go to Detroit. His career record kind of took a hit, even if it could be on the upswing. Still a young guy. Quite possibly a lot of managerial career left for both of them. Right now, though, Dave Roberts probably doesn't get enough credit for being 6th all-time in managerial win percentage. 618 career win percentage. Actually pretty remarkable. Obviously has a postseason track record. Now he has a couple of World Series titles. Just as it stands right now, Dave Roberts may go down as one of the best managers ever because he's been the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers through one of the most successful eras in the history of a very storied franchise. Yeah, 5 years from now, if the Tigers are perennial contenders, AJ gets another World Series, we can start this discussion all over again. Who would I want managing Game 7 of the World Series? Now that's a fun one. Whatever team it might be, I might lean AJ Hinch. But the body of work for Dave Roberts is pretty undeniable right now.
Forever linked in time and a big sliding doors moment that year and its subsequent fallout. All right, let's wrap up with this, Cody. So you teased it last time we talked, and now it's out, and this episode publishes Wednesday morning. So that gives you basically 2 days, but not quite. Thursday at 5:00, the Tigers fan survey on The Athletic closes. So if you want your voice heard, you need to go to The Athletic, go to the Tigers page, and it's one of the first up there right now. So I'm just going to kind of go through it, if you don't mind, Cody. Spoilers, sure. and I'll just kind of give my answers. It's kind of like you have an MVP vote, and then you just kind of talk about MVP. Some people do that. I don't. You don't do that, but I don't have a vote, so I can do that. So first question: how would you rate Scott Harris as president of baseball operations? These are poor to excellent scales for everybody. I'm gonna go very good. You can't go excellent without winning something. I think everything that Scott does is purposeful. This is kind of repeating what I said last year, but like he did get to the postseason in his second year as president of baseball operations, and there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that you have to figure are going to be in the Tigers' favor moving forward. Speaking of AJ Hinch, how would you rate AJ Hinch? I am going excellent with AJ Hinch because with managers there's enough. It's all in front of you. So there's enough that you can see where, and he obviously talks every day. Unlike Scott Harris, it's his job to talk, So I see what he's doing. I see him like explain it. I'm like, yes, I think he's as good as you get in baseball right now as a manager. So, if there's a reason to root for the Tigers just from a pure baseball perspective, it's like you want AJ Hinch managing a good team. I think that's good for baseball. How would you rate Chris Ilitch as team chairman and CEO? I'm not an anti-Chris guy. Very good seems a little strong. If there was something between average and very good, I'd probably do that. But I'm going to lean average because there's nothing spectacular that's going on. But I do see that investing in the team as they like to say, not necessarily payroll, but all that other stuff. He's definitely not negative. He's not a net negative as an owner, like right now, based on everything that he's allowed Scott Harris and AJ Hinch to do. And by the way, he got, he's part of the team that got both of these guys, particularly AJ Hinch, to come on. So he deserves credit. But like if you sign Bregman, maybe I give you a very good, but and that's not his fault, but didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't think you get very good for putting a roof over the turf field. I also just wrote a Paul Skeens story, which you can read on The Athletic. Chris Ilitch, kind of a lot better than Bob Nutting, so it could be worse.
There you go. That's what we call a tease right there. On a scale of 1 to 5, how committed is Tigers ownership to winning? That's not 1, not very committed, and 5, extremely committed. I give that a 3.5. Like, like I do think that, like, how committed are they to winning? They did go top dollar for Alex Bregman, right? So, like, you didn't get him, but you did, but that's commitment, right? So I would say, I talked myself into it. I'm gonna give it a 4. You're not like doing the massive contracts in Los Angeles, but committed to winning. That seems pretty committed to me. They played the market really well with Jack Flaherty. I'm on record as saying I think Scott Harris would operate this way if he was a big quote unquote big market president of baseball ops. I think it's just how he likes to do things. But I think we were all a relative level of surprised when the contract offer got reported that they gave Alex Bregman. So, like, that's commitment. So take that word at the face value. That is commitment. Who's your Tiger? I'm shouting Riley Green. I can't wait to see the answers on this and how many of them might be protest answers based on who's available here. But Riley Green, I think, because position player, I think there's a lot more for him. Like, Tarek Skubal's here, and like I'm sure he can get better or whatever, but he just won the Triple Crown, the Cy Young. That's pretty high to a ceiling. I still think there's a lot more for Riley Green to do. So I go with Riley there. How would you grade the offseason? Standard A to F. I would give it, like, we talked about this before, the B- to C+ range. You did like bring in Flaherty. Torres, I think, is going to be good, but the flaws are obviously there. You didn't land Bregman. So if you made me choose, I'd go C, but it's a C+ and D-. And did you want the Tigers to sign Alex Bregman? I would have done yes, but only the short-term deal. I would have just done the Red Sox thing and just, like, I would have flooded every single dollar for that. And I'm having struggled scrolling this on the mobile, but you guys get the gist. You guys can go and you guys can go take this survey and have your voice heard. About the Tigers and the Athletic, and then we'll talk about the results too. That's why I say I can't wait to see who's your Tiger or whatever. There might be. If you're a family member of one of these players, I highly recommend go take the survey and vote. So very interesting, very interesting. I'm glad you do this every year, Cody, and not just because I remember taking data journalism classes with you back in the day. All right, anything else before we get out of here?
Did I leave someone notable off? Who's your Tiger? What's the thing here?
That's for people to go in there and figure out themselves. That's a tease. I want them to take the survey. So you didn't leave anybody off. It's just a long list, is what I'm saying. So anyway, anything else before we get out of here?
I just didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and you can still write in other. So no, that's all I got. Hope you guys will take the survey, and we will discuss the results soon.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening, subscribing, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram. You guys know the deal. You can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran_Steckley. Pop page is at Tiger Territory _. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I am Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.